Hi everyone, my name is Fairly. If you don't know me yet, I make videos here about tarot, magic, astrology. If you do know me, welcome back. Thank you for coming back to my channel. It's been a while. You know, I was doing my daily videos for a long time and then I had kind of a weird life shift, and it was well ahead of the weird life shift everyone is having right now. And I really wanted to kind of come back and talk to you guys about what's happening and what we can anticipate going forward. You know, as an astrologer, I definitely knew that 2020 was going to be kind of a weird year. I've never wanted to be that astrologer, and I put that in air quotes because I think that there's a certain reputation that some astrologers get for being very fire and brimstone. I've certainly had clients in the past that ask me questions where it's like, well, am I going to get sick this year? And, you know, it's like, I don't like to handle questions like that because honestly, I don't know. I can tell you what the energies around a situation are, but I can't tell you exactly what events will transpire in your life. And, you know, the same energy that spells disease and destruction can also just be like a change in home situation or a shakeup at work. So the same energies mean different things to different people. And I definitely didn't want to interpret some of these really big aspects that we had as destructive off the bat. But here we are, right? Specifically, what I'm talking about is the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in January. So on January, I think it was officially like the 10th, but really between the 10th and the 12th was when it was the most intense, and then we started to feel that pretty much up until the 20th. Regardless of the time frame there, Saturn and Pluto met up for the first time in 34 years or so. And certainly the first time in Capricorn in about 500 years. So this was a once-in-a-lifetime, major life-changing aspect, regardless of where it hit your personal chart. The thing is that both of these planets have kind of a reputation for being really dark and heavy. And I don't like to go dark and heavy. I don't think it's helpful for anybody to be worrying about what dark heaviness is going to transpire. So I don't focus on that. I've chosen not to focus on that. And yet, I kind of feel like I've let you guys down by not talking about it, by not giving my fair share of insight. And I have had a lot of time to really think about the way things have gone. Prior to all of this, back in February, just, you know, a month after this really big, heavy aspect happened, my father was in the hospital, and it was a very strange freak thing. We still don't know what happened, but bottom line, he went in possibly for a stroke and ended up in a coma for a week and had 2 collapsed lungs and, you know, the whole 9 yards. Luckily, he's fine. He's doing well. But I was really frightened, and I definitely looked at that aspect in my own personal chart and saw where it could have affected my family. And that was just the beginning, wasn't it? So, you know, personal matters aside, a lot of people are looking at the world in a very different way right now. You know, this aspect, to really break it down, Saturn is the last traditional planet of the zodiac. It rules over Capricorn, which is why it's been such a really big influence over the last few years that it's been in its home sign. Traditionally, Saturn has associated ties to, yes, business and trade and very material things, but it also has ties to disease, death, destruction, darkness, all of these really big things. Pluto, once it was discovered, took took a lot of that heaviness from Saturn. So now when we look at Pluto transits, we do tend to look for more societal issues of destruction and change. Change really being the key word there. So we knew that this was going to be a big transit and change a lot of things. A lot of astrologers have predicted for a very long time. I mean, years ago. I remember back when Pluto moved into Capricorn back in like 2008, my own astrology teacher told me that she was, predicting that big banks would go out of business and major conglomerations would fail. The US government would undergo really serious restructuring. And that's Pluto in Capricorn, because Capricorn rules all of those big authoritative energies. I haven't spoken to her in a long time, so I don't know what her prediction was for this particular conjunction, but it's safe to say that all of those things look like very real possibilities right now. And in my experience, transits become the most powerful as they reach their conclusion. And we're now looking at Saturn moving into Aquarius. It's the first time it's changed signs in years. And for a lot of people, that means that it's going to be their Saturn return soon. I have to say this is not a world in which I want to have my Saturn return right now, but it honestly gives me a lot of hope going forward, because while Saturn in Capricorn is very concerned with structure and business and regimented action, status, and, honestly kind of this like weird Luciferian like way of addressing authority, Saturn in Aquarius is very different. Now, I also want to point out that traditionally Aquarius was ruled by Saturn. Again, Uranus is a modern planet. It was not used until very recently in astrology. So when it came to every sign, they had, every planet had two signs that it ruled. And for Saturn, that was Capricorn and Aquarius. And Saturn does have a light side. Saturn can be very humanitarian. That's the Aquarius side of Saturn. So when we're looking at this ingress, which actually happens at the same time as the spring equinox, the same time as astrological New Year, we're looking at a world that's much more concerned with setting up sustainable structures to actually support growth and innovation. And I think that's exactly what we need to get out of this. I can't necessarily speak for every location out there right now, but I'm in New York. And when New York announced their state of emergency and recommended that we all go kind of, into as much self-quarantine as possible, the Vertex, which is an imaginary point on a chart, it's not an asteroid, it's not a planet, it's a mathematical calculation, has something to do with the ascending and descending energies. That vertex was directly conjunct the North Node, which is still in Cancer. And with the eclipse axis, the way that it's been, I've talked a lot about how this is going to rebalance the way that we look at work and home, our domestic lives, our private lives, and the way that we publicly show ourselves to people. But when this all happened, that vertex, which is the point that we look at on a chart when we're talking about destined meetings, big energy that changes trajectory, I think it's safe to say that that axis became more about how we can sustain ourselves, how we preserve our domestic lives. And the restructuring comes from there. It's not so much about rebalancing as it is pulling it all back to the start and then figuring out how we build it back up. The world is going to look different at the end of this, and I'm not being an alarmist here. I'm not saying millions of people are going to die and this is going to be terrible. I'm not saying that at all. I really think that it seems like we're getting a good handle on this and we're making a lot of progress. But we're going to need to do some cleanup. We're going to need to pick up some pieces. And that's where the very Cancerian concept of self-care comes in. If you listen to the Instagram world of spirituality, self-care is bubble baths and scented candles and just taking some time for you because you deserve it. And that is part of it. That's part of it. But right now, self-care looks like social distancing and voluntary isolation and making sure that you stay healthy. It also looks like making sure your finances are as in order as they can be. I understand that many people are out of jobs right now and you're not making any money, let alone the money that you were. And that's scary, but it's not time to worry about that. Instead, try to make some smart choices and figure out how you can keep a handle on what you do have. If you have any spare anything right now, look at investing. There are structures in place to protect investments better than there are in place to protect personal finances right now. So that could be a really good option. I'm not a financial advisor and I don't pretend to be, but it is something that I highly encourage you look at right now just to set yourself up to be in a better place. We're not done with this energy. Saturn is moving into Aquarius, the sun is moving into Aries. Things are changing and they're becoming brand new shiny beginnings for us to take advantage of if we want to. If we have the wherewithal to rally right now, this is a wave that we can ride to a great new place. All of the social injustices and the causes that people have been fighting for, I hate to say it, but I think this is how they turn around. There's something in the collective unconscious right now that has taken a really big shift. I want to believe that's a good shift, so let's make it a good shift. I've been hopping on Instagram every morning and doing a live stream, drinking coffee, saying hi to everybody, and pulling some tarot cards to really set an intention for the day. And every single reading I've done so far has really focused on transformation and learning. This is an incredibly transformational time. And if you're willing to take this time and use it productively to learn new things, even if it's new things about yourself, I'm not talking specifically about learning skills or anything even practical, just recentering who you are and where you want to go and what priorities you have, you are poised to really get ahead here. If there's one thing that I believe that magic and tarot and astrology and all of the things that I preach can do for people, it's bring hope and optimism where maybe your perspective has been a little more grim. And I'm choosing to apply that harder than I ever have. We're not done with the Capricorn transits, unfortunately. At the same time all of this is moving along, we also have Mars conjunct Jupiter this week in Capricorn. And there are those astrologers right now who are claiming that we're going to see a spike in infection rates and we're going to see, higher fevers and higher death toll numbers and, because Jupiter expands things and Mars is a malefic. Mars also traditionally in medical astrology rules fevers and eruptive disorders. So pandemics kind of fall in that umbrella. And when you add Jupiter to the mix, you see this swell in influence. But while I feel I would be remiss to not mention that under these circumstances, I want to focus on the aggressive optimism of this situation. And I'm choosing those words very carefully based on those planetary influences. Jupiter is generous to a fault. It's expansive. It wants the best. It's the planet of wealth and fortune. Mars, is traditionally a malefic, but it's the lesser malefic. That's the good news. But at the same time, Mars is all about charging forward and using an energy to get ahead. So in this dance that it's going to do with Jupiter, I think that we can ride this optimism to a better place. You know, from there, Mars then moves into Aquarius and it meets up with Saturn. And, you know, I've got my concerns about that transit, but I'm really hopeful that the Aquarian energy is going to prevail and we're going to see a lot of humanitarian outreach, a lot of charity, a lot of community coming together. If you have any local ties right now, you know, this is really a time to tap into them. See if your friends locally are okay. Check in with family. You know, support small businesses. Order, you know, delivery from local restaurants if your grocery stores are running low. It's a time to pull together. You know, New York has been kind of a disaster. And, you know, Broadway closed. When's the last time that happened? The answer is 2001, but only for a few days. So if we can look at that pattern at all, you know, 2001, after 9/11, there was a huge pull in community. People came together all over the country, not even just in New York, to really rectify the attitude and the energy going around. That's what we need more than ever right now. Just stay positive, stay up. I've been, like I said, on Instagram constantly lately, because what else am I going to do? But, you know, part of that has been posting stories about how I've chosen to handle this time. And I've gotten a lot of messages from people, you know, saying that they've gotten some good ideas about, you know, the things that I'm doing and how they choose to handle their time now. This is time to be used productively. If at any point you feel like you just need to talk and get something out, you know, reach out to me on Instagram, drop me a comment here, let me know how you're doing. I'm going to be doing a lot more videos, a lot more kinds of videos. I really want to do something fun to just keep the energy light and happy. So if there's any ideas that you have that you want to see me do, please leave me a comment. I would be happy to workshop anything and everything right now just to kind of keep things going. We're going to get through this. You know, this is not a time to focus on the negatives. We easily could. I mean, this is not a great time for mental health right now, but let's make sure that we stay on top of it. With love and a little bit of magic, we can get through this together, I promise.